The Bismarck, nucleus of the Third Reich's naval power during 1940 to 1941, is shown in the camouflage she wore in early 1941. Immediately before putting to sea for the breakout into the Atlantic along with the Prinz Eugen, she was painted with the common grey of German warships. The black and white bands of the hull and superstructure, as well as the dark extremities and the white waves and wakes of the hull, constituted an attempt to reduce the apparent length of the ship. The swastika was intended for aircraft recognition, and it could be conveniently covered by canvas when it served no purpose. The sortie into the Atlantic was to lead the Bismarck to sinking the HMS Hood and, finally, to her own destruction. With a standard displacement of 41,700 tons, the Bismarck had a length of 251 meters, a beam of 36 meters and a draft of 9.3 meters. With an engine power of 150,170 horsepower, the Bismarck could achieve a maximum speed of 30.1 knots, and with her load of 7,461 tons of petrol she could travel 9,280 nautical miles at a speed of 16 knots. The armament of the Bismarck comprised 8 380mm cannons installed in 4 twin turrets, 12 150mm cannons installed in 6 twin turrets, 16 105mm cannons installed in 8 twin mountings, 16 37mm cannons installed in 8 twin mountings, and 12 20mm cannons installed in 12 single mountings. The reconnaissance aircraft were 4, or exceptionally 6, Arado AR-196. The armor layers of the Bismarck had a thickness of 145 to 323 mm in the belt, 45 mm in the torpedo bulwark, 50 mm in the upper deck, 30 mm in the main deck, 80 to 120 mm in the armored deck, 220 to 340 mm in the barbettes, 130 to 360 mm in the main turrets, 20 to 100 mm in the secondary turrets, and 220 to 360 mm in the conning tower. The armament on the Bismarck was distributed like this: 4 380mm twin mountings, 2 of 4 and 2 abaft, 6 150mm twin mountings, all amidships, 8 105mm twin mountings, all amidships, 8 37mm twin mountings, 4 in the fore section of the superstructure and 4 in the aft section of the superstructure, and 10 20mm single mountings, scattered from the fore end of the superstructure to the aft end of the superstructure. The 3 propellers had 4.7 meters in diameter and 3 blades. The port and middle propellers rotated counterclockwise, whereas the starboard propeller rotated clockwise, reaching 270 revolutions per minute at full speed. The electric steering system controlled two parallel rudders, each of which had a size of 24.2 square meters and an inclination of 8 degrees from the vertical centerline. For Arado AR-196 reconnaissance seaplanes, whose wings could be folded to save space, were carried on board the Bismarck. Two aircraft were stored in a double hangar located beneath the main mast and another two in single hangars located at both sides of the funnel. Optionally, another two aircraft could be carried, but they would have to stay on the catapult at all times. The armor in the belt was made of Krupp cementite face-hardened steel plates of up to 320 mm in thickness. The belt was backed by a layer of teakwood of 60 mm in thickness, which helped to absorb shock damage, and bolted onto a side plating of 16 to 25 mm in thickness. The armor above the main belt was made of Krupp cementite face-hardened steel plates of 145 mm in thickness. The armor in the secondary cannon turrets was made of Voton hard homogeneous steel plates, which in the barbettes had a thickness of 80 mm above the deck and 20 mm beneath it, while in the turrets had a thickness of 100 mm in the front, 40 mm in the rear and the sides, 35 mm in the front roof angle and 20 mm in the rear roof angle. The armor in the conning tower was made of Krupp cementite face-hardened steel plates, which had a thickness of 350 mm in the walls and 220 mm in the roof. The armor in the fire control structure located on top of the conning tower had a thickness of 200 mm in the walls and 100 mm in the roof. Optical stereoscopic rangefinder for anti-aircraft fire, covered by a spherical cupola, which had 4 meters in span and could see the horizon about 15.4 kilometers afar. 7 searchlights of 1.5 meters in diameter made by Siemens Schuckertwerk AG were installed in the superstructures of the Bismarck. 2 of them, placed at each side of the funnel, were fitted with dome-shaped covers. The armor in the main cannon turrets was made of Krupp cementite face-hardened steel plates, which in the barbettes had a thickness of 340 mm while in the turrets had a thickness of 360 mm in the front, 320 mm in the rear, 220 mm in the sides, 150 mm in the side roof angles, 180 mm in the front and rear roof angles and 130 mm in the horizontal roof. Each of the main cannon turrets weighed 1052 tons. A set of hydrophones allowed the Bismarck to detect the noise emitted by the propellers of submarines, torpedoes, and surface ships on a range beyond that which could be seen in conditions of low visibility. The 380mm SKC-34 naval cannon weighed 111 tons and had a total length of 19.6 meters, 52 calibers. It had a muzzle velocity of 820 meters/second and an effective range of 35.5 kilometers, being able to fire 3 800-kilogram shells per minute. Unlike the Bismarck, other contemporary capital ships had triple cannon turrets, which allowed to decrease the number of turrets, the length of the armored citadel and the length of the very ship while increasing the number of cannons to 9. But the more traditional arrangement used in the Bismarck had advantages as well, an increased capability against multiple targets, an increased difficulty for the enemy to disable all the turrets and a higher field of vision and fire in the stern area. Optical stereoscopic rangefinder, which had 10.5 meters in span and could see the horizon about 11.5 kilometers afar. The foremost main cannon turret had its rangefinder removed because of the damage taken from sea water when navigating at high speeds. Optical stereoscopic rangefinder for anti-aircraft fire, which had 4 meters in span and could see the horizon about 14 kilometers afar. No less than 17 hose reels of different sizes were distributed along the main weather deck and the superstructure to assist washing or fire extinction throughout the whole ship. The 105mm SKC/33 naval cannon had a muzzle velocity of 881 meters/second, a total length of 6.84 meters, 65 calibers, and an effective firing range of 17.5 kilometers. The electrically powered twin mountings weighed 27.85 tons and were designed to compensate the motion of the ship and thus stabilize the aim onto the target. Since they were exposed to the weather and the sea swell, they posed a great maintenance burden. These pieces constituted the backbone of the anti-aircraft artillery on board the Bismarck and could fire up to 15 rounds per minute. The 150mm SKC/28 naval cannon weighed 9 tons and had a total length of 8.25 meters, 55 calibers. It had a muzzle velocity of 875 meters/second and an effective firing range of 23 kilometers with a 45 kilogram shell. Unlike the 105mm mountings, these pieces were intended for being used solely against naval or ground targets. Optical stereoscopic rangefinder, which had 6.5 meters in span and could see the horizon about 11.5 kilometers afar. In the secondary battery, only the central 150mm turrets had rangefinders installed. The pneumatically powered catapult, which had 32 meters in length and could be extended telescopically beyond the ship's sides to a length of 48 meters, launched the aircraft at a speed of 70 knots. The double-ended design, with 2 shuttles allowed to launch the aircraft from either side of the ship. The 2 cranes attached to the funnel and standing above the catapult were used to move the aircraft from the catapult to their hangars and vice versa. Each of the 2 main cranes located amidships, made by Demag, could lift up to 12 tons. They were used to lift aircraft or boats from the sea to the ship or vice versa, an operation which required a very calm sea condition. The Bismarck had a good equipment of motorboats. The largest of them had 11.5 meters in length and weighed 7 tons. As in other ships, there were also smaller boats of manual propulsion and pneumatic rafts, but the latter are not visible in this illustration. Fire control module with integrated FUMO-23 radar and high-precision optical rangefinder. The stereoscopic rangefinder had 10.5 meters in span and could see the horizon about 15 kilometers afar. Optical stereoscopic rangefinder for anti-aircraft fire, which had 4 meters in span and could see the horizon about 15.8 kilometers afar. Fire control module with integrated FUMO-23 radar and high-precision optical rangefinder. The radar operated with a frequency of 368 MHz, 81.5 centimeters wavelength, and had an effective range of about 25 kilometers. The stereoscopic rangefinder had 10.5 meters in span and could see the horizon about 20.8 kilometers afar. 4 smaller rangefinders were installed around the structure, which supported the fire control module. Fire control module with integrated FUMO-23 radar and high-precision optical rangefinder. The stereoscopic rangefinder had 7 meters in span and could see the horizon about 16 kilometers afar. The armor in the largest part of the upper deck was made of Voton hard homogeneous steel plates of 50 mm in thickness. The main weather deck was lined with teak to ease walking in wet conditions and was devoid of lighting openings to not compromise protection. The 20mm Flak 30 anti-aircraft cannon had a muzzle velocity of 900 meters/second, a barrel length of 1.3 meters, 65 calibers, an effective firing range of 2,200 meters and a rate of fire of 180 rounds per minute. The ammunition was supplied by 20-round box magazines. The 37mm SKC/30 anti-aircraft cannon had a muzzle velocity of 1,000 meters/second, a barrel length of 3.074 meters, 83 calibers, an effective firing range of 2,000 meters and a rate of fire of 30 rounds per minute. The rounds were loaded by hand one at a time. Optical stereoscopic rangefinder, which had 10.5 meters in span and could see the horizon about 13.5 kilometers afar. There were 6 minesweeping paravanes ready to use on the upper deck. They were intended for being towed from the ship's sides to cut the anchor lines of mines, which would then rise to the surface of the sea. The armor in the upper deck, which was made of Voton-hard homogeneous steel plates, was reinforced from the average of 50 mm in thickness to 80 mm in thickness around each pair of main cannon turrets, around the secondary cannon turrets and under the conning tower. The 2 capstans located in the bow shared the burden of lifting the 3 bow anchors and their chains, which weighed 112 kilograms per meter. The capstan of the stern anchor was installed beneath the deck and thus it was not visible from outside. The Bismarck carried 3 anchors in the bow and 1 in the stern. They were made of cast steel and each of them weighed 9.5 tons, including the shackle ring. The chains had 72 mm in thickness, a weight of 2.8 tons per each stretch of 25 meters, and a permitted load strain of 99.7 tons.